So what's up, guys? We're here for the first podcast. Maybe we can take a moment to say who we are.
All right. I'm Iago Davids, and I work at Nancy Campbell Academy as a teacher.
Nice. My name is Dorian Lushugurhi. I'm a Nancy Campbell alumnus, and I work here now as well in student placement. Okay.
All right. So hopefully we're going to have some enjoyable time, and both of you have some things in common, right?
Yeah.
Like you have arrived here from Africa, via various places, but from Africa, and both have kind of really different stories. And I think it's kind of fascinating to think about how this all happened. So perhaps, I don't know, maybe Iago, you could start by just letting us know how you came to Nancy Campbell Academy.
So, a lot has happened up to that point where we made the decision. And my wife and I were thinking of the best place to take our children. I'm part of a mixed race marriage. So the government of South Africa did not give her papers. And so we had to decide to go to a new place which would accept us both.
They wouldn't give her papers because she was mixed race?
No, the couple, I am one race and my wife is Korean. And the government was taking a long time. If you know anything about, I don't want to speak poorly of the...
No, say it how it is. Say it how it is.
So the South African government is known to be lethargic at best when you think about getting any paperwork done. Like, you could be married and have kids and live there for 10 years, and you still might not get PR. So she was on a spousal visa. She wasn't able to work. And it's frustrating because now you're sitting with a baby at home. And yeah, mine isn't a unique story at all. So we decided, okay, we're going to go somewhere. And we were looking around, and we have family here in Canada. My uncle and my cousins up in Brampton and...
So I knew some of your relatives.
Yes, that's right.
Is that how you guys first got in contact then, and in that way?
Actually, my uncle then you guys sent out a work, there was an advert for a position, and I had told him, look, I'm thinking, just mentioned thinking, and he got right on it. And he immediately asked around and he found that advert and he sent it to me. So I thought, okay, why not? I'll go ahead and start up. And then I got the interview and I was like, okay. We did it via Zoom. Thank God the internet was working that day because that was another thing. And
you might not have made such a good impression.
No, imagine cutting out halfway. Like, electricity was off. I'm sorry.
Load shedding. Yeah, that's what they call it.
I prefaced the meeting. Like, when we first met, I told Sana, who was the VP at that time, I told him, look, electricity might just turn off. I don't know.
They offered him the job immediately. Times up.
Well, I heard there's a lawyer that's applying for a job that wants to be a teacher in the school, and then I heard your name, and I've had worked with your uncle in some activities in the Baha'i community, and so that was kind of I knew him and I knew his work, so I thought, okay, this will be good. So the way the interview went.
Oh yeah, I was kind of nervous. We had 2 interviews. I remember that. And I'm sitting there in a suit and it's hot as heck. And you came in midway. You asked me like 2 questions and I think you had already made a decision in your head. And you're like, okay, try and set this up. And then you left. And I was like, okay.
Wait, was that here or while you were also...
I was on that side.
There was AC wasn't working.
I'm sweating. I got a full suit on because I want to impress. I'm like, okay, take out the lawyer suit, put it on. And I was trying to keep my kid quiet in the background too.
You said I asked 2 questions.
I remember it was very short. You had come in, or maybe it was that it was winter on my side and it was summer at your side. I can't remember. Either was shivering or sweating, or maybe I was sweating because of the interview. But you came in, it was very bright, and you had said to Sana something about, let's start, what do we need to do? And then Sana and I had continuous meetings afterwards to figure out what the process is for coming here.
Yeah.
And that's pretty hectic. Yeah.
Right.
I definitely would have been like, we want the truth.
You want the truth?
And then you'd be like, you can't handle the truth. You don't watch movies. It's totally.
God. I know who it is. It's Jack Nicholson.
Okay, there you go.
Jack Nicholson, A Few Good Men.
Yeah, and we are a few good men. There you go.
Okay.
Well, there were quite a few complications with you coming to Canada. Like, we'd have to demonstrate that we couldn't find a Canadian teacher, but because of the connections and so on, we thought, okay, you'd probably do well in, especially it was for the world citizenship courses and law and some of the social science subjects. So you would have needed to, be fairly well-rounded. And I was trying to figure out, why would a lawyer want to leave law and his courses that he was involved in and come to Canada and work at a high school? And whether or not you'd really be happy doing that, or whether this was kind of like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
But I think I felt pretty convinced that you were committed to this. And then, of course, the next obstacle was whether or not you'd ever be able to get through with the whole visa process.
Yeah.
So we began it, and obviously it worked out because you were a lucky person.
I was going to say, at that point, Sana had tried, and with the LMAA, you had to have done the whole sending out of an advert, and I knew, I did my lawyery ways and did my research, and I knew right then and there it was next to impossible. So then I said, okay, you know what? Leave it to me. I will find another way. And your reply was, okay, if you're still here, we'll hold the job for you. And I said, I was very, very, very happy. And I was like, okay, I don't know how that's going to pan out. It might be a long process. But then I hired someone in South Africa. There was a firm that was doing it. And a 2-year process, collecting documents, filling out forms, waiting. And because we had stayed in many countries, it made everything so much more complicated. But that being said, after I got through, I came as a PR. So I went through one route that secured my place here. Because a lot of people come on a prayer, and it's really, really hard to stay. And it's become increasingly difficult to stay in the country. As Dorian was saying earlier, it's easier to come, it's harder to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your experience was quite a bit different.
Yeah, way different.
So what made you choose to come to Nancy Campbell?
Well, to preface, I did not choose to come here willingly. It was, I wasn't smuggled here or anything. To be a little clear, what had happened was I lived in Nairobi, Kenya, and I went to a private international American school, and I'd been there for pretty much all of my schooling, from elementary school all the way up until high school. Had my friends, I had my community, but it was, I shouldn't say, and it was a tougher community because I'll just speak my truth. As a Black student in that space, and all my teachers and a lot of my my classmates were white American students or people from Europe. It was really hard trying to find my identity in that space, and then going home and I'm still in Kenya, still in Africa. I have African parents. So balancing that was a little odd, and I always faced some sort of obstacles. And I remember my dad coming up to me. He's like, man, aren't you just tired of having to deal with that? I was like, no, but if I just do this, I'll finally be able to be what they want of me. And this is exactly how I should be, trying to fit within a certain construct. And I I remember he's like, well, my good friend, your uncle, like my uncle, his kids are in Canada. I was like, man, Canada's really cold. Like, I don't think mind you, I spent most of my life in sub-Saharan Africa, so it was not going to be an easy sell. But I remember the first time Nancy called me, I said, thank you for your call, but no thanks. And it was just like kind of like water on the stone. More and more conversations were happening. And, my dad said, just try summer school. I was like, well, it's May. And I like, wouldn't I have to go now? He's like, no, it's a program in August. He's a little sneaky like that. We don't condone lying to your children. But I'm glad in that way he kind of coaxed me into it, because through those conversations with Nancy Elliott, I was like, wow, like this is a space that, would allow me to be just Dorian and show up in that way. And when I came over here, that's basically how I came over here, because it was like, hey, you'll have the opportunity. You want to be in leadership positions? Cool. We got a student council here. And by the way, it's not based off of a popularity contest, but it's more about a consultative process between all your peers. And it's 9 people. And then within that 9, they can decide who's chairman, who's like whatever. But it's a lot more merit-based, I found, instead of like staff members like at my previous school being able to like kind of blackball you if you wanted to.
Yeah. And you were I remember when you arrived, you were very positive, upbeat kind of guy.
Skinny, bald, and super, super upbeat, yeah.
But also I noticed from the beginning that you were definitely interested in leadership things and political things. And so it seemed like you were, warm and friendly, interested in what's going on. We're quite
I'm blushing.
No, you were quite outstanding, and didn't take any time at all really to start, connecting with other people and stuff. So we were quite happy to see you in that condition, which was great.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it just, the move over was kind of easy in that sense, where like being in Canada was a huge culture shock for me, regardless of the fact that, yes, did I go to school with a lot of people from the West, but we were still living in Africa. So like all the other stuff was very very lethargic. Just like, everything just happens real slow and like, and different things like that. But being over here, there was certain things I just had to adjust to. But the fact that everyone was coming from everywhere in Nancy Campbell made it so much easier in that way.
Yeah, I think that is also one of the things that was kind of outstanding, because people were somewhat reserved depending on where they came from. And, in a way, Nancy Campbell's environment is the whole world comes to a place. A small number of people from different parts of the world come to, one place. And, there's a lot of trying to figure out, well, what's expected of me, what's, how's it going to be. But as I said, you made some pretty quick connections, and I think made it easy to start building bridges right away. And that was very positive. Meanwhile, then you were there. And
he was my first student.
The fact that him and I are sitting here together in unity, it is seriously a miracle. Because, listen, I spent 4 years at the University of Waterloo, studied legal studies, go Warriors. And I can say without a doubt, unequivocally, that his law class was the hardest class I ever took. And I respect you for it, because I wanted to I was like, man, why won't this guy just do because when I heard that he was coming from South Africa, I started to shake a little bit, because I know what African education is really like. There's no, Mr. Davids, I was sleepy last night, I didn't do my none of that. Because that allows you to run away from your potential. So there was a lot, and I appreciate you a lot for that, for like not allowing me to just sit back and coast the last bit of my grade 12 year until I got to university.
I remember that one of the things that got to me, I was like, where is he going? Because you were busy with all this service. You were always busy with service, and he was the one to call whenever anybody needed something. And he just disappeared. And I'm like, this cannot be. Right? I'm like, this is absolute nonsense. So I remember being at a staff meeting, and I was like, there's this guy called Dorian. I just don't know what to do here. He just disappears. And then I don't know how am I supposed to grade him? I can't even have a conversation with him. But he was always busy serving. It wasn't like, okay, I'm just skipping. And it seemed that everybody in the school, students included, called on him to, like, be there for them, represent them. If you think of somebody who is going to be, what do you call that, the like head or the chairperson of the student council, didn't we say president of the student council?
Was chairman. Served one term limit.
The politics.
No.
But actually, I think the sincerity was probably more. But it's kind of interesting you mentioned that, because I think that was something that was sort of your test, because you had a mental model of education that really was about the academics and these things coming first. You obviously understood that model, having come from Africa yourself and understanding his mindset. But in the meantime, I was having, as the principal, was having this struggle with Mr. Davids, because I'm thinking, oh man, this man is strict. And I'm thinking, okay, he's got them jumping through hoops. And then I was probably the antithesis of what you needed, or the kind of backup you were expecting.
Yeah.
Because I was the man saying, oh, the students are doing all this service. You got to be able to cut them some slack. And, they got to do both things, but you can't just prioritize the one thing. And I could see in his face that this was not.
It was eating me. I couldn't believe it.
And then I even at one point, you may not even know this, even at one point I said to Mr. Zari, I don't know if this is going to work, because he's just so, well, it was like you had that track, and that was the track. So I thought, okay, it's going to either kill him or he's going to change and accept that there might be a different way to do all of the academics and still achieve the things that the school also felt were so critical, which was moral leadership. Not that you were saying moral leadership wasn't important, but prioritizing service and other things to the community or to the group was not clearly what you thought should be his priority.
I think it's one of those things where you adapt or die.
Right.
And I mean, it seems extreme, but and a shout out to Mr. Vejdani at that point. He could see it. He could also see it in my face, and he came every single morning, and he would sit with me, and we'd just talk. I'd be at school like maybe an hour. Like, that was my thing. I would be there an hour early, and I'd be ready and prepping, and I would leave an hour later, and I'd be doing things, right? And then I'd go home and then grade for like hours on end. Yeah. And
you weren't asking from your students something, you weren't demonstrating.
Yeah, I was definitely giving. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, I also thought, what am I bringing across? What standard am I trying to raise out of them? But at what cost is it coming? And are they learning if they are under such pressure and under, But I remember Mr. Vejdani coming and talking, and it was polar opposites, because I was feared. I know I was feared. And he was loved. He was loved by all the students. And here you have two polar opposites just connecting. And I was like, you know what? I can learn from this man. What is he doing right here? What can I take? Because it's not as if he wasn't also about always being prepared and being excellent. But he was connecting with the students in a way that was a little bit, I guess, less harsh. And I owe a lot to him for at least guiding me and showing. But it is true that rigid mentality, the way in which we were taught in South Africa, and I was also teaching at university level too.
Yeah, so it was
one
environment.
Yeah, the academic level in university is like, you do or you die. You either do the work and you're in class, or you're going to suffer.
Well, this kind of makes me think about something that occurred to me in the process of what kind of environment are we trying to create in a high school. Number one, we were trying to say high school should not be a place where people do things to you, but where you learn to do things for the world. So if we really mean that, then we've got to get students thinking about service, and we got to support them in that service. And you can't ask them to do this and then not balance the time so this is possible. So that was one thing. But the other part was, it occurred to me that the world knew how to reach a high standard, but through force and not through love and encouragement and striving for excellence. Like that kind of inspiration and desire was not, the manner in which the education that I was familiar with was going for this, and it was probably a really big question through the development of the school for me is it possible? Because there was always this thing that if you became really loving and nice, then can you be firm and achieve excellence in academics? Or will the students, there's a lot of views about youth being lazy and youth not wanting to work and, that are embedded in that model of force. And that's why force is being used, rather than this idea that, there's latent kind of within them, this desire for excellence, this desire to do well, and quite the opposite. So what had happened that we had given up on this view of people, including youth, especially youth, that they may actually be striving to do things for good reasons and want to be successful and didn't want to be in an environment where the starting point was to believe that they were, going to have to be forced, manipulated, cajoled into, doing something productive.
No, yeah. I think walking that line is pretty difficult, but I think at the school it's done pretty well. That just makes me think more about that one class that we did, the law class, because I think part of that was I wanted to run towards the service aspect of it, because I'm like, that comes easier to me instead of the part where you have to actually kind of push yourself academically, because that also in a way affects your service, because if you don't do that part, you're kind of only going halfway, I'd say, so that was the first time that I'd ever really seen, databases of legal cases and these different things, and actually understanding that, research is a really big part of even how you serve. You can't just walk into the neighborhood and be like, all right, we're here to do something, without understanding more about what's going on over there. And I think that I think that structure really helped in that way as well. So yeah, no.
But I think I'm appreciating the shift that we're making, the integration of the service within the curriculum, so that it doesn't feel so disconnected. You can do service, but it not being connected to the curriculum can put strain. And I guess it's this thing of coherence, having a coherent life and having everything connect. And us as teachers sitting together and thinking of not just how to connect service within our courses, but how to connect the courses themselves with each other. So it doesn't feel like, there's a separate branch of education that's, if you're in the sciences, you're in the sciences and that's it for you. Or you're in the humanities, don't give them a calculator and that's it for you. It's more, how do we live life knowing that every single aspect of it is joined and is valuable? And that has changed. I can see over the short period, I can only imagine what you've seen over 30 years, but over the short period that I've been here, I've seen the shift. The service is still there, the academics is still there, but there's this shift of making it more coherent, making sure that we are coordinating with each other as teachers.
Yeah, and part of that has been really having deeper and deeper discussions amongst the staff about some of the fundamental underpinnings of the kind of environment that would be able to present it in a coherent way. And I remember the House of Justice had written a letter to me saying that, Nancy Campbell has taken a professional curriculum and infused in it the special spirit of the revelation. And when I read that, I thought, this makes the most sense, because what is that spirit? The spirit is to be of service to the common good, but also not abandon all of the curriculum or things that one needs to learn to make progress in their work and to broaden their understanding of things. But also, I feel like it felt a little bit more forced in the beginning, because, you have two different mental models that are almost like colliding, because it's a false dichotomy, right? It's, it's either service or academics, where really that is not a dichotomy. It's how do you integrate them? And I think one of the problems with knowledge generation that's going on is the knowledge that we're generating being culled from our experience and application of what we know in changing society and developing the world, versus wise people sitting in ivory towers espousing theories that might have no connection whatsoever with change or things happening, but might be very seductively interesting, but not really producing any results. So that's, to me, like the biggest challenge in our courses in the school, in the activities of helping us re-examine, how do we become more effective in, because what value would all the knowledge be if there's no change?
Right.
And I mean, that change stretches from the student all the way to the teacher themselves.
That's right. We can't change one and not the other.
Exactly. Reflecting on this now, it's remarkable how quickly things have changed in the last 2 years. When we started doing the DSA material and studying more about the purpose of education. And yes, as you say, initially it feels a little jarring and a little bit forced, but it's remarkable how quickly it's just been adapted and adopted into the classes. And I think the students are appreciating it. You can see in the way in which they interact with the coursework and the activities.
Yeah.
You can see it's much smoother from their side, just accepting the changes and the differences that they see within the classroom. And I mean, speaking back to what a classroom looks like in South Africa, and I'm sure anywhere else that you have been, and what we're seeing here at Nancy Campbell, I can't even begin to think that they would be able to describe what we have. Right? That's how far sometimes it feels like the classroom. So I'm sure out there somewhere you're going to have teachers attempting their best to give students a coherent life and to give students, opportunities. But I don't know if it's being done like this from my experience, right? From where the levels I've taught. I've even been to Korea. I was teaching in Korea at one point in time for about 5 years. And boy, they take the same model as the Africans. They are brutal. They are brutal. They are strict. And I don't know if they're achieving that same level of service and coherence with their own lives. It's like all study all the time. And they're studying like, I remember my first night in my new apartment in Korea. I'm laying, it's about 11 o'clock at night, and then suddenly I hear the shrieking, a little girl shrieking, right? So I'm getting out to the window. I'm like, oh my God, is she being attacked? It was just 2 girls going home after school, 11 at night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, and so while I was there, we connect with the youth and we speak to them, and you try and introduce a service activity with some maybe junior youth study, etc., like combining that study of the Word of God. And they didn't want to hear it. They're like, we study all day long. What do you want us to do, right? And it's tough trying to accomplish what we're actually accomplishing here at the school, where there is joy that students are taking their weekends and wanting to serve more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of when you have, top-down control, then, people, when they get free, don't want to have any control and almost go excessive. So, from a psychological point of view, the environments that we create for youth and the way in which we treat youth, I think, lead to this bursting out, sometimes crazy stuff, because there's been so much control. And internal architecture hasn't really been developed in terms of regulating, but also not a lot has been done to try to figure out how to accomplish both of these things, of moral education or moral leadership and academic excellence, and how you integrate those together. So hopefully, we're going to learn more and more about these environments. And I think as more people become committed to them, they'll start to take root. But it's almost like, I don't know how it can change completely. When you have dedicated systems to this, it's not going to happen very easily. I've traveled and visited many, many schools in, China and South America, the Caribbean. And the model that is most prevalent is the one that you're talking about, which in some ways kind of creates an elite system of some certain group of people benefits, but the others often fail at making it through the places you have to hit. Where I think that's another thing that I see about this integrated model is more people end up being successful. And like at this school, whatever the deficiencies a person might have or the complications, that can be dealt with and helped if it's done in an integrated way. But when you have the cutoffs that have to do with a top-down kind of process, it doesn't work the same.
Yeah. No, I feel like, no, I agree with both of you are saying, but just as a student who went to this school and got to experience it, I feel like a massive part of that is the staff, right? So when we're talking about the top-down control, a lot of times more traditional schools, I'd say, like you have the staff squeezing the kids to, study, and go home at 11 p.m. as it was in Korea. But I think it really starts a lot of times, at least for me, when I was inspired, was by staff members. Iago won't talk himself up, but he is a trained lawyer, and he worked in environmental law. Was it? Did you, or was it?
No. I was like I actually worked at a law clinic, so I was dealing with all the indigent members of the community, people who couldn't afford lawyers.
Right.
So I was helping
them, and like I think the fact that you don't talk it but you walk it as well, so it's very easy to be all talk. And when you're a teenager and you're seeing your teachers walk around being like, hey, did you get your service hours in, did you do that, and it's like, did you? But like, yeah, like that was because
you don't want to say that.
Yeah,
but
I definitely did say that. Me and him spent a lot of time in RMT together, because of things I'd say. But I also just want like people to also like get an insight into the staff that we have here. Like Iago was born at a time and in a place that makes him sound really old, but he's not. He was born in a time and a place that not everybody. In a place like this right here, us three sitting together just would not happen, right? And couldn't happen. And I really want to speak more to how, because we're talking about service and coherence. You're born at a time of mass injustice, and you could have become this resentful person, but it seems that you've kind of taken a situation where of like, not saying that you were experiencing all of this, but you saw a lot of injustice around you, and instead of perpetuating it, you somehow decided to go the complete opposite way. So what does it take? I guess for me, I'm wondering what is that process? What was the thought process for you to, not perpetuate systems, but also be a part of that change? Because you can't ask your students to be a part of change, unless you also do it. So
I guess for the people who are watching, he was hinting around it, but I don't think it was clear enough. I was born during apartheid, and just outside, I was about 10 years old when the first free election happened. And so to what extent did I really, really suffer from apartheid and things? I don't know. It depends on who you ask. And it depends on the circumstances, because it's not as if the circumstances that surround apartheid and the pain that was felt and all the things were remedied when I left. That was one of the hardest things also, to decide whether coming here, should I stay and try and make a change? Right? Leaving as an educated and trained person, you're a resource. Then I looked at all the lawyers, and there are like thousands of lawyers like that. I was like, all right, they're good. They don't need me.
They're missing out on the next Mandela.
But it was very... No. What was interesting, during that time, once things had gotten out of apartheid, people were hesitant. Are they really okay? I come from mixed race. I am a whole bunch of things put together, and in South Africa we've got a term for that.
Oh, they'll cancel you if you use it.
Here it's a sensitive term, but and I know one of our South Africans, what's her name?
Tyler.
She got into trouble for trying to say that she wasn't black. But that's the brainwashing that happens with these man-made things of black, white, and the races, right? It's not really the case. So I come from Cape Malay, colored as a background. And it's a mixed race between black, white, and Asian, because of the Asian slaves that were brought into South Africa. And you kind of sit in the fence, because in apartheid, they purposefully put you in different levels and ranks. And so people were always suspect of each other. But growing up, I remember so vividly, it was the Baha'i faith and my parents' involvement in the Baha'i faith that had determined our relationship with everyone. There was no place that they weren't going into, no home that we weren't praying with people and eating with people. I remember going on service trips as like a 13, 14-year-old kid, sleeping in a shack. Right? It wasn't like, oh, you don't go to these type of places because you're a certain color or you're not the same color. And the fact that all the youth in my group and all the adults that were with us accepted us, and we lived in this particular, you suddenly realize just how powerful that is. I didn't have the space to be negative. They gave it, like people were struggling. I can remember the youth, we went to go for a teaching trip and do service in one area, and we were 10 youth. Literally, there was a bucket in front of us, and all of us dipped our face cloths in there. We were all standing naked, and we wash, and we had to dip our face cloths back in and dry off the soap.
Wow.
That was it. There was no water to spare. That was your bucket. There was no hot water. You had to heat that water with a fire, and you could only share it.
So I know your kids can't complain.
They cannot complain. What
they don't know real struggle.
Absolute luxury. But it was interesting. These things that shape you, the struggles that shape you, they shape you in ways dependent on who's around you, I think, right? And how they've accepted it. Everybody knew that South Africa was changing and we were all struggling, and and that there was a lot of pain that needed to be fixed. But I see how everyone was so joyful around us. I just didn't have the opportunity to feel negative thoughts to anyone. And that shaped, my perspective on life, my perspective on, and that's also what determined at the end, like, what do I want to become, right? When I was deciding, and law was there, I was like, I want to make it better for the people that I am working, like, that I'm living with. And I didn't want to be a corporate lawyer. I said,
You don't like money? No,
I don't like. Clearly, I don't, because that NGO was poorly funded, but we took on all the cases, and that's where I fell in love with education, because I said, okay, I can see a group of people that I'm helping. They don't know their own rights. They're being fleeced at every turn. If I created a workshop and I taught them what their rights are, what effect would that have? And so with the program that I had at that point, I was going around the province to all the legal clinics, and I started to lecture. I took cases on, but I started to lecture as well. And then I realized afterwards, I don't want to go into law anymore like that. It's better to teach this. The transformation sees, I'm not talking down on any lawyers, but the transformation that you see in education is, it's far more rewarding.
Yeah. So the maybe we could, I was just thinking that if there's a quote that says the root cause of wrongdoing is ignorance. And, if we believe that, then obviously the best tool for transforming out of social justice wouldn't necessarily be the fight at one end that lawyers may find themselves in, although that is important to make law reflect what is just. And at the other end, or deep underneath it all, is going to be the need for education as the greatest weapon against social injustice. Because unless people change their thoughts and minds, and of course, as a result, their hearts, and it's the little things that start to make that change. But it takes a lot of sacrifice to be in education. And we're glad that you decided to come to Nancy Campbell and be part of that. And we appreciate both of you being here today. And we look forward to future podcasts.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We're closing it out, but super quick. I'm
taking it plug. Oh, plug it.
No, we have to. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment. Make sure you're subscribed. Seriously, turn on your post notifications. Right. You can follow us on Instagram as well, Nancy Campbell Academy. And yeah, thank you to these beautiful two young men right here coming on and speaking. So you can catch us here next week, and we'll have new guests.